Welcome back to Car Coach Reports. I'm Paul.
And I'm Lauren.
And this is episode 4 of the Car Coach Reports podcast. And today we're digging into the auto industry's trials and tribulations as they try to navigate all of the crazy regulations that are coming down from Washington.
Or were coming down from Washington. Now they're going away.
Because things are changing.
Right. But you know what's also interesting? We know that Lee Zeldin, who's in charge of the EPA, is in the process, as we did in our last segment that was on Car Coach Reports, that it's going to Congress and they're going to remove this electric vehicle mandate. But why in the world are car manufacturers going, no, we want these, even though we take a loss on every single car, they're taking a huge loss. They're in deep trouble. Every brand is cutting back production, letting people go. We notice on my side, less car events for me to go review cars. There's a lot of negativity. And it's like, why would you push for more negative?
Right. And the only person that's actually making any profit off of all this is Tesla. Because they're selling the EV tax credits that they're getting back from the government, which are slowly diminishing and soon more than likely going away once it gets passed.
As soon as that Congressional Review Act happens, it's over. And that's one of the biggest things. And that's actually interesting because it forces the removal of this electric vehicle mandate to go to the floor of Congress. They have to vote. They have to call out their names. So we all know who's for it and who's against it.
It's a proper vote, yeah.
Right. But once it's done, they can't go back to the next, let's say whoever's the next president says, I want to put it back in. You can't. It takes an act of Congress to do that, which is extremely difficult, which I think requires like 3/4 of Congress, 2/3 to, it's more than would be possible to put it back in place.
In this current climate, absolutely.
Well, I think the car manufacturers as a whole should not want this mandate. And if people want to buy electric cars, there's some phenomenal product. I just reviewed the Hyundai Ioniq 5. I've literally driven every single electric car that's out there. You name it.
There's some really good ones.
From a Rolls-Royce Spectre to a, Hyundai Kona.
We still like the Genesis GV60. Great car. I still wish it had a motor, or an engine. But anyway, so
Hyundai's pretty savvy in this. I have a feeling they might have some plans.
Yeah,
but in the meantime,
that's the big thing.
That's interesting.
There's so many of these vehicles out there right now, and it's not like. And we have statistics proving that electric vehicles are not popular with the public.
Right. And we've done a report on that. Only about 5%. On a global basis, it's a little higher, but it's mostly because of the cost of the vehicle, the insurance, the charging infrastructure,
practicality.
Yeah. And it doesn't work for electric buses, as we know, because that company that the government funded with your tax dollars is out of business. And it was a Canadian company of all things.
Yep, and only the handful of chargers that they built when they were, how many billions did they have? And
yeah. I had someone reach out to me from one of the school districts in one of the states, I won't dox them, asking me, how do I get out of this contract? Because they agreed to buy 60 of these buses with no infrastructure, and now their school district is upside down, and they're trying to figure out how to get out of it. I think you need an attorney. That's really the bottom line on that.
Yeah. So there's a lot of money flying around. There's a lot of development costs that are integrated into this whole conversation because when the word came down during the Obama administration, and he said, you know what, hydrogen doesn't seem to be working fast enough.
It does work, though.
No, it does work. But during the Bush administration, where they were pushing for hydrogen as an alternative to gas because there was a concern about cost, long-term reliability, access, which is a different conversation, but there was a lot of concern over access to fuel in the long term from oil. So they're working on hydrogen.
I'm not using that word. It's not really a word.
Fossil fuels.
What's that? There's no such thing, although they use it.
It's fossilized minerals, plants, things like that.
Right, but there's no such thing as actual fossil fuel.
Yeah, we're not melting dinosaurs. It's cool to say that, though.
That's my line.
But
it's crude oil, essentially.
Yeah. So they were pushing for that. It didn't really work fast enough. And so the Obama administration said, all right, let's go to electric. Let's try to do this with solar farms and wind farms, and let's do electric vehicles, and let's push for that. And so everybody got on board really quickly because it was an easier transition to try to make an electric motor than it would be to modify existing motors to use a completely different and highly combustible liquid hydrogen.
Right.
So billions
Hydrogen
and
works,
billions.
but we've talked about that before
Yeah,
too.
very interesting conversation. Really, really cool.
Even though President Trump says it's going to be an explosion, it's not the Hindenburg. I
No.
hate when he says that. So whoever has access to reaching him, please, I'm happy to tell you the truth. BMW has
Well,
hydrogen SUVs and they work, and Toyota's using it for trucks and trailers.
Mercedes.
Mercedes-Benz there's lots of
Oh,
technology going on.
Hyundai.
Hyundai as well. Huge investment, and it works.
Yeah.
The problem is there's no infrastructure, much like that.
Right, and so that's kind of the whole thing is that
That's why it doesn't work.
when they latched on to EV power, it ended up actually moving pretty quickly. I don't
With
I don't
government support.
with a huge government support. Actually,
With
I think
tax
much
dollars.
larger government support than there was for hydrogen. We'd have to look up some of the numbers to get specific, but essentially billions of dollars over the last decade have been pumped into EV development, and every single manufacturer under threat of fines and
Government regulations.
yeah,
Crazy.
government regulate, literally the governments of the world, not just America, of the world, coming down on these huge companies that live and die by the narrowest of margins.
Right. And you used to work for Nissan, so you know. And I used to work on the dealer side, the training side, so I understand.
It's the overhead. The overhead is absolutely massive.
Right. And there is profit margin, but not on electric cars. And so when China came into the fold, they said, we can't, we've discussed this before, we can't beat the gasoline-powered cars. So we're going to push the electric charging along with a partnership most likely from Obama. But we don't know that. That's just speculation. So what do? They bought all the mines so that they could control it. Then they said, and we should do this and push from the World Economic Forum and everybody else. And the governments, they're pushing on brands to say, hey, if you don't comply, we will punish you. And so what ended up happening is an interesting, I hate to call it partnership, but we'll say alliance.
Agreement
With the car brands and the governments working in parallel, which does not help you. It does not help local dealers. And this is a huge problem. And that's why when President Trump got in, the first thing to do is remove that mandate here in the U.S. Other countries will follow. We just have to get the ball rolling. It's only been a few days into his administration, but we're seeing changes already because we know that other countries struggle. But why would car manufacturers push for this, even though they made an investment and they're taking a loss and they had all these fines, which will go away at least here in the U.S.? Why are they pushing against what the Trump administration is doing? And they want to keep electric vehicle mandates. It doesn't help you. It's your tax dollars.
Yeah, I mean, if they're not selling anyway.
Right. They're not selling, but we want to.
Right,
They're
but
not going to sell it all without the rebate.
but each of these companies are worth hundreds of billions of dollars, and they've all invested many billions of dollars already into this tech. And if they drop it now, I mean, imagine that you go and you want to build a house, and you get the foundation down, you put the walls up, you put the roof on. The house isn't done. You've done a ton of work, right? You've made great progress. The house isn't perfectly livable yet. You could really sleep in there with a sleeping bag if you wanted to.
Okay.
And then you say, gosh, you know what? Now I'm just going to walk away.
Well, it's not a walk away. You can reuse some of that technology. We're seeing it like Volvo does plug-in hybrid.
Just like you can go and finish building the house at any time.
Right.
But
well, every brand's doing plug-in hybrids and hybrid technology.
Yeah. And there's it seems to be a good alternative for a lot of people. But essentially they've put so much time and effort into going in this direction that if they step back now and drop it, they're worried that all of that money and the infrastructure, especially retooling their factories.
Teslas, yeah.
No, but retooling their factories, investing in companies that build the charging systems. I mean, there's a lot of money flowing around here, and it's not just on the manufacturing side. It's where that money goes elsewhere. And
that's a big question. Where is that money?
Okay, so imagine with me for a moment. The government says, we are going to put in a mandate. We're really worried about the environment. We're worried about fuel, whatever, all the different reasons. And we really want to push electric vehicles as the future. And so the manufacturers say, okay, great. We're going to follow that mandate because we don't want to get fined, and we want to,
Like
And
Ford,
we
big Ford and GM.
right,
Yeah.
and we agree with your position on whatever, and then they go and support the lobbyists back at the government
That's where the money is.
and say
Lobbyists.
you know what, it'd be really great if you could support legislation that would make what we're doing, because we have to,
How convenient.
easier, and then it creates
We'll get
this
you reelected.
yeah, exactly. It creates this loop where the government says to the manufacturers, you have to do this, and the manufacturers go back to the government and say, please do this, and then it's just and it's
But that doesn't
and there's
help.
a lot
that
of money
doesn't help
flowing around.
citizens. That doesn't help consumers, because really, if the government is in bed with car manufacturers, which some in Washington do believe, that's not good for the dealers, and that's not good for you as a customer, because they're going to force you to buy something you don't want. And people are saying, you know what, I'll just keep my car. So the average car on the road is about 15 years old now. But the impact is a little different also when it comes to the dealers. Whether you like the dealers or not, the dealers are a business. They're a local business. They hire people. They use local businesses to support it, whether it be from the dry cleaner to the little diner around the corner to whatever. There's a million places, the accountant, the marketing guy, the radio station, all of that, everything. And it goes on and on and on and on. And a perfect example is what happened in West Point, Georgia, when Kia came and built a plant. That was a ghost town. There was nothing. There wasn't even a Chinese restaurant. Now it's a booming metropolis because people live there because they're working at that plant. So those cars then go to local dealers. Local dealers are everywhere. Those local dealers have a huge impact. So if you said, I need jerseys for my kids' soccer team, where do you usually go? Car dealers.
Hey, get a sponsorship from the local dealer network,
Right.
because they want to advertise to the parents, and
Right.
it's
They want you to buy their cars.
how expensive is it to say, yeah, you can,
Right.
you know,
But they want you to
local
service
street.
cars. They want you to collision. Whether you go to the dealer or you go to an aftermarket, all of that is part of the support around the auto industry.
It's huge. There's just as much money in all of those things. And we here in Buffalo, we really see that. There's a couple of local
We have good
dealer
dealers here.
groups, and they really care about the community. They put money into all sorts of events around here, and they're very
That's
important
almost
cornerstones of the community. And so, of course, we've seen this other places. We definitely feel it here, and you probably feel it where you are if you see that around. But now, the manufacturers are making these EVs, and only 5% of buyers want them on average
So where are
around
they
the
sitting?
world.
They're
So they're all-
sitting on dealer
Well,
lots.
so they're sitting on manufacturers' shipping lots. They're
Right.
they're sitting on dealer lots. The dealers also run on really tight margins.
Oh yeah, we know that too. You worked at a dealer as well.
And so if the people aren't buying them, the dealers aren't selling them, the dealers don't want to buy new cars from the manufacturers, but they're also beholden to the manufacturer.
Right. It's like McDonald's. You have to buy from your supplier.
And there are dealer laws in America. There are a couple of exceptions. Rivian, I don't know if they sell enough to need a dealer network. Tesla does sell enough to need a dealer network, but
They have a repair network.
they've got some sort of deal with the government, or maybe they've just not done it and never been caught.
Yeah, that's more like a
But
Lucid.
Tesla's the biggest
Yeah.
company that sells cars that doesn't have a dealer network, and so they bypass the dealer laws.
Yeah, you got Lucid, Rivian.
Even Ferrari's got a dealer network.
Oh yeah, and they're
You-
really
You
strict.
can't buy from Ferrari. You have to go through a dealer.
Right.
And they don't sell a lot of cars. Tesla definitely sells more than that.
No, for sure. And even without the electric vehicle mandate, it's actually really good for Tesla, because he's like, yeah, that works, and I take away my competition.
Well, he's the number one seller of EVs.
Right.
And people love his cars.
People that want them, buy them. If you want to buy one, go get it. I've never said you shouldn't be able to buy one. Personally, I won't own one, but it's me personally because of the way my lifestyle. But I mean, I know people that love them and I know people that hate them.
Yeah.
But it's very interesting to watch the dealer impact. And a perfect example is we have a friend who bought a Porsche Taycan, who lives across the street from us, and he paid full ticket for it. And it's a lot of money, not your average car. But he decided he didn't like it because he couldn't get charging. He said, I'm going to go buy a Panamera instead of a Taycan. Took it to the dealer, and the dealer goes, I want it back. He goes, this is a brand new car. I just bought it from you a year ago. And they go, we don't want it.
Mhm.
Why don't you want it? because we can't sell it.
Yep.
And we can't sell the used ones.
And they would sell it for about maybe somewhere between 50 and 75% of the value,
Loss.
which is a huge loss.
Yeah.
By the way, if you go online and you look for a used EV, and let's say you really want an EV, you love the Taycan, great car, or one of the other
50 grand.
Yeah, one of the other cars out there. Yeah, someone buys it for 100. You buy like a 3-year-old model, it's like 50 grand. The floor is like $10,000 on EVs. You can go and buy a used Mustang Mach-E. I'm sorry, Mach-E, because it's not a Mustang.
Nope, it's not. Sorry, Ford.
You can go and buy a used Mach-E right now for like 20 grand, and new they were like 60, 70.
But
So
it's
like
buying a used phone.
No,
I
but
don't know if you
nobody
charged
wants 'em.
it. I don't know. I don't know what the history is. It's a used car. If you buy a used car from your local dealer and you buy a certified pre-owned, and that's also an interesting thing. You buy a certified pre-owned, they will not certify pre-owned electric cars.
No, because we don't have enough data over a longer enough
Ford already doesn't. I know that. They will
Reliability.
not stand behind their SF90, which is their hybrid plug-in.
And they're 296
290. Yeah, so any car that's a plug-in, the dealers are a little concerned about selling it with a full warranty. They'll give you a 90-day because they don't know what someone did with the charging.
Mhm.
You know, the charging cycle. Did you leave it plugged in all the time? Did you drive it till it was like you're supposed to run a full cycle? Most people don't. It's like your phone. I plug in my phone every night, so you probably don't want to buy my used phone because it's always up charging.
Well, yeah, and that's why they're integrating this new tech, and a lot of older EVs don't have this. And I've talked about this in previous episodes. The production cycle on vehicles are so long; it takes like somewhere between 5 and 10 years to produce a vehicle, and so what's going into it is not always new technology of any kind.
Well, you've seen it. You've seen it
down
live
from-
in person.
Yeah, down from the glue that's going onto the chassis to the tech that's going into your center console to the way that they, molecularly design the paint, whatever. So when you get your car and let's say it, like on my phone, it has that, it charges up to 80% and then
Right.
holds it. And then when you're going to use it, it charges it up to 100.
Right,
A lot of newer EVs have that, but not every car does.
right.
And
I mean, if you're buying a Rolls Royce Spectre,
I mean, that's why
sure.
the scooters.
Yeah.
The scooters were setting on fire because they didn't have.
They just kept on charging to get overheated.
Yeah.
I got rid of my electric
Yeah,
scooter.
just
I
can
had one of those.
can you imagine just pumping continuous energy into it?
It's
well,
heat.
the batteries explode or they what's it called, the thermal expansion.
Right, the chemical chain.
Yeah, and-
it's like a chemical reaction. And it one cell sets off the next cell in a car, but on those scooters and bikes are
It
dangerous.
starts as a chemical reaction in the battery and eventually it turns into a fire.
Right,
And you're off.
heat. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
So as far as the dealers don't like the electric cars. They can't sell them.
Yes.
You go into any dealer, go look on the
So
lot.
what's the next step then? What happens to the dealers if they can't sell cars enough
They
to
sit.
keep them alive?
They sit.
Bill, they die.
Right.
The
Right.
dealership network will collapse in on itself, which is also a huge industry.
Economic.
I mean, we're members of SEMA,
Mm-hmm.
and we know that the dealer network is such an important piece of the aftermarket
Mm-hmm.
because think about all of the used parts because every
Right.
dealership has a repair center. Almost every dealership has a repair center.
Mm-hmm.
And, plus they're selling additional services like ceramic coating, which, that's a whole different
The
industry.
upsells are where the money is.
Right,
Yeah.
right. So there are industries that are connected to the dealer network. And if the dealer networks collapse, multiple things happen.
Be bad.
You can't buy a car from the vast majority of manufacturers. Or let's say that,
Which you may think is good.
let's
but
say it's
not.
dependent on the area. Let's say that, because we're in the north, it's cold.
Mm-hmm.
People don't want to buy EVs. The percentage of cars being sold up here drops, and the manufacturers say, I can't give you an internal combustion engine because I've hit my cap,
Right.
or I've already distributed.
California.
I can only give you EVs, and the dealerships say, well, I guess we're going to sell nothing. We have to close.
Right. And there have been some dealers that have gone out of business or there's been a lot of consolidation lately. The very large dealership in the Northeast just sold everything. Sold the car dealerships, the repair, collision, everything. I was actually surprised. I used to be a dealer trainer and they were a huge dealer group. But at some point you see the writing on the wall and go, okay, until this changes, I don't know if we can survive. Because when you're that big and you have that many different brands, the impact is obviously larger than if you're just one little Dodge dealer in the middle of, East Jesus, Nebraska. So I think that those are things that people don't realize, that these dealers are local businesses that make money, that give people jobs, that helps the economy. And when they can't make money and they can't sell cars, I was just at a Volkswagen dealership here in the area, and I was looking at the ID4, knowing that they're not selling, and they're not going to do the ID7 here in the U.S. And he's like, "Oh, are you interested?" He got all excited. I said, "Nope." I go, "Just looking," and they eventually know who I am. But it was one of those things that they realize they can't sell these cars, and if anyone's interested, they get super excited. We have great deals. We'll offer you incentives. So they're taking a loss to get the car off the lot. The problem is the manufacturer's pushing them to buy more of things that don't sell. So if you're, again, my favorite description, you're a coffee shop and you sell donuts that sell, but I'm going to force you to sell candy, but no one goes in there to buy candy. That candy's going to go bad eventually. It's going to sit there and sit there and sit there, and you're like, I sell donuts, I sell coffee. Why are we selling candy?
Mhm.
Or you're selling toys.
And they're asking you to stop selling coffee at the same time.
Right. Yes, exactly. That's a really great analogy. Please stop selling coffee, but we're a coffee shop.
Yeah.
We make the donuts. Don't make the donuts. We want you only to sell toys and coffee. It's like, why would you do that? So again, this is the problem, is that they don't want to sell things. They don't want to put things on a lot. So their lot gets filled up with cars that don't sell. And it costs them every single month with something called floor planning. And the dealers and the manufacturers are constantly in conversation, because they need the dealers, and they have these annual dealer meetings, these quarterly dealer meetings, and I've been to a bunch of them. And the car manufacturers say, this is what we want. They get to see the product ahead of time, but when they see things they don't like, they push back. And that's, you're seeing a lot of that with like Stellantis, which is Dodge, Ram, Chrysler, which is also Alfa Romeo, Maserati, and Fiat. And I feel for those dealers because they need product, and you can only do so much on Jeeps and Ram trucks. But it looks like there's going to be some changes there. And we're constantly reporting on that, so you can check that out on some of our other stories. I think there's going to be some changes thanks to, they hired at least 2 new people to run. But in the meantime, dealers are standing there going, I got one Fiat. It's electric. Can't sell it.
Yep, that's it.
You took away all my performance Alfa Romeos. What are you doing?
Well, that's why I'm so glad that a lot of these companies are starting to backtrack.
Mhm.
They're not stopping selling their EVs and their hybrids. They're saying we're also going to offer ICE, or at
Right.
least we're going to a vehicle that was an EV we're going to offer as a hybrid. Porsche Macan,
Yes. Push back on Porsche because they're not selling electric cars.
Maserati,
Yes. Well, we'll see what happens with that.
Lotus,
Oh, yeah, Lotus, yeah. That's a tough brand anyhow.
quite a few more. The list is growing every day.
But on the bigger companies, you look at something like Ford,
Mm,
they really want to keep that EV mandate.
mhm.
Partly because Bill Ford is very green.
Yes.
And that's his personal
And
wish.
all of these companies have made these huge sweeping public statements. We're going all
Mary
EV,
Barra, GM, yeah.
and they're shutting down ICE stuff. They're not scrapping the tooling, but they're
They're shelving it.
yeah, they're shelving it, and they're pushing all of their investment towards EV, which means that I can assume that ICE technology is being put to the wayside, and where the
Well,
CAFE standards are still in place.
For now, they're
And
going
they're
to
insanely strict.
Right. So right now, most brands did not make it, even with their electric vehicles. But I think with Lee Zeldin in charge of the EPA,
Charger was the other one. They're
yeah.
adding a hybrid.
Yeah, of course, and Sean Duffy at
Yeah.
National Highway Traffic Safety Administration.
Mhm.
I see some changes there, and I know that Senator Bernie Moreno is also pushing real hard. He used to own a lot of car dealerships, a big dealer group, and now he's a senator in Ohio, and he wants to be the car czar. So I hope he gets that, because we need car people that understand the industry rather than a bunch of government officials that think they know what you want
Or
and
even
what
just-
makes sense.
Or even just business people, because
Well, there's not
Because
most
if
of
you-
the government doesn't know anything about business.
well, yeah, but let's say that there's some business people that are involved. Whatever percentage that may
True.
be. But this is not a issue of understanding how the business works. This is an issue of understanding how the car industry works.
Right.
It's a very, very unique scenario because it is tied so intrinsically to the fabric of America.
True.
And so we have a more concerted interest in the future of what's going to happen to our cars than a lot of other places around the world, because Europe was built in a completely different way. They have all these little, it's hard to find countryside like it is in America. It's a completely different, I can drive
We witnessed it personally.
2 minutes from my house, 2 minutes, and there's farmland.
Right.
I can drive towards your house, I hit farmland. I drive towards my sister's house, I hit farmland.
Absolutely.
You go to England and it's kind of like in between you France, Germany. There's so many little cities. That's how they were built, all these little cities.
Right.
And there's even sections where you can drive from city to city and never leave a suburb. It's just always some sort of infrastructure is there. And so because travel isn't as far, and a lot of this is like anecdotes that I've heard from friends and other people in the news.
You've been to a lot of countries.
I've been around a lot as well. And yes, if anybody in the comments is like, but there's farmland in, yes, I know.
There's farmland in every country.
But the point is that if I'm, and look, if we didn't do road trip, we love road trips.
Yeah.
We're going on a road trip
Next week or
at the end of the month. But when we want to go somewhere, we get in our diesel vehicles and we drive 700 miles
We have
without needing
diesel
to refill.
SUVs, and we're not getting rid of them.
But if I wasn't doing that, and I know there's plenty of people, I have friends that they just, I have no reason to travel. I stay here. So I have my EV.
That's
and I drive from home to work, or they work from home. So, they go to the store, they visit a friend's house, they go home, they plug in their car. It's practical
it
for
could
them.
work for them, sure.
But because so many cities in America are farther away from each other, like you can get anywhere in Buffalo in 20 minutes. It's kind of a phrase of ours.
But it's
But you
a
have
small community when you look. It's like Market 54.
Yeah, but
compared to like New York City, where it's all city and there's no place to charge unless you go to Brooklyn or New Jersey.
right. But even in like smaller cities like ours, it still is a good bit of travel to get somewhere.
Yeah.
It takes me 25 minutes to get to my sister's house.
Right.
But how does that translate when you have an EV? Okay, well, I
charge at your house when I come over?
Yeah, exactly. Can I charge at your house when I come over?
Whoa, yeah.
Or if you're in cities with tighter streets, or like New York City, or
Well, I used to live in Manhattan.
plenty of other
There
issues.
was no place to charge.
When I was living in Tennessee, there's no way I would have been able to drive into Nashville and say, "Oh yeah, just let me hook up."
If there's charging, there's charging in Nashville.
And
But there's no charging around here.
There are parking lots, and they're starting to expand and give more access. But when there's only like 2 plugs,
And there's 2 people that already parked their cars. That's the problem I had in LA.
or when there's 30, but only half of them work, and there's a line down the street.
Yeah, we see that during every single holiday in LA. I have driven electric cars in Los Angeles, San Francisco, San Diego. And while they say there's charging stations, and I've driven all the electric vehicles, the biggest problem is, and it actually has happened to me up in wine country, but it happens also in LA. Yep, that you go, there's 4 chargers. Great, there should be a spot. Well, you get there and all 4 are full. Okay, well, I'll go to a different charger. No big deal. You pull out the app, you find whether it's Electrify America or Tesla or whatever, and you get there, and then you find, there's 4 chargers, 2 don't work, whatever brand it is, and 2, there's cars parked there, and there's no one around. They park their cars and they disappear.
Well, they have to, because it takes, if you're...
What are you going to do for 20 minutes? Sit in your car?
if
Maybe you could take a nap. Hyundai's got a lounge chair. You can take a nap. But honestly, because of health reasons, which we have not, I'm not a doctor, it's probably not smart to stay in your car while you're charging.
Well, we have it on good authority.
From people that know.
From somebody that works in the Pentagon,
Yep.
that the radiation coming off of batteries, the electromagnetic frequency radiation that's coming off of electric batteries when they are charging, is so intense that
You're frying yourself.
that you shouldn't be in the car.
Well, even one of the charging
While it's
companies, which
charging.
I will not say who they are, we had a conversation off the record, so I promised I would not disclose the company or the person. But they said that, I would not stay in the car. And they were talking about wireless charging. Yeah, we'll electrify the roads. He's like, no.
I can only
I said
imagine.
it was a he.
It's fine. I can only imagine what with that amount of EMF, and this is a serious concern. Anybody that knows about this stuff,
And if you don't care, then don't worry about it.
You're welcome to go and do your own research on.
We're not
about this,
doctors. We're not.
but I'm simply thinking about if the frequency coming off of the batteries while they're charging are as high as it is now, and it's not, quote unquote, safe to be in the car or next to the car while it's charging. And most people will plug it in for 30 minutes. They'll go in and go to the bathroom, get a coffee or whatever. That's how people do road trips, right? It automatically plans your route. No, on the EVs. In the EVs.
Listen, keep going.
No, in the EVs, and they plan your route and you stop. But those guys that are sitting in, they leave their car. I need a charge. I'm at 20%, and I need to charge.
That's anxiety.
But anyway, so let's imagine that you can fill up your car with electric energy as fast as you can, as we can fill up with diesel.
Holy moly, that would be
right. So that's exactly what I'm thinking.
That would be a high. You'd be talking like 440.
It'd be like standing next to a power plant, or those generators that are on the the giant transformers that are like, and there's nothing built around them for like 500 feet.
Yeah.
Well, that would be your car. The heat, that would be your car, just the heat alone.
The heat alone would fry you, which is why
your phone might not even work if you're standing next to the car.
Well, they tell you, and I'm not a doctor, but they do tell you, and doctors say, don't charge with your phone next to your nightstand, next to your face. Don't, fall asleep with the phone underneath. If people do that, they'll have the phone right next to them. They were looking at something and they fell asleep with the phone charging.
Because we're talking about it's either prolonged exposure or high frequency exposure. But these are things that we're thinking about because.
But why is the government?
The conversation is so many faceted that we have to be able to think about all these things that are outside of the world of automotive to be able to try to make sense of everything that's going on.
So why is the government pushing all these electric cars then, if we know that there are some negatives, whether it be the charging, the cost, which might change? The insurance, the charging infrastructure,
especially,
sitting in the car while you're charging, lack of charging stations, as Granholm made a fool of herself. It was awesome, actually.
Senator Granholm, the audience
Senator Granholm tried to do a program where she drove from point A to point B, and she sent her staff ahead of her so that there would be always a charger available, and they would park a regular gas-powered car there. And when she got to the one, there was a family who had pulled in with a little kid, and they were literally on fumes, essentially. Pardon the expression. This is an expression. They were at the bottom of their battery charge, and they said, we can't move our gasoline-powered car because we're saving this for Senator Granholm. And meantime, they put up a fight, and I would too, because you've got kids in the car. And they called the police, and they made them move. So when she got there, she had to wait, which was not the whole concept, because it was a marketing exercise or a publicity stunt.
Just trying to make it easy.
Trying to make it look like anybody can just go anywhere and look at every charging station is open. No one hangs out for a long period of time. But the truth of it is, that's not the case. And everyone laughed at her. It was all over the news if you hadn't seen it. And I think we covered it as well.
Yeah. Yeah, we definitely talked about that. I remember that story.
Yeah. I just laughed.
Check out the Car Coach Reports YouTube channel for more information on that.
Yeah, and all the car reviews live on Car Smarts now. So a lot of people have asked, "What, you're not doing car reviews anymore?" Yes, I am. We're putting out 3 a week still, and they're over on Car Smarts.
And that's linked down below and on the channel bio.
Right. So we did it so that we could keep apples and oranges separate. It probably makes more sense this way. And YouTube likes it.
Yeah.
But
so that being the case, we've seen all these EVs. We're watching all the news happening. We're getting some word from our insiders about the changes going on.
Changes.
So what happens next? What is the future for the automotive industry in a world where the EV mandates are pulled back and the EV tax credits are dropped?
I like that.
And
there's $1,000 tax that looks like going to be one-time purchase. You buy the electric car, it's $1,000 fee because you're using the roadways to repair roads and bridges, which I think is pretty reasonable, actually.
Which according to and
for 10 years.
And hold on, let me explain that.
Okay, go for it.
It is the equivalent of what you would pay in the gas tax for your gasoline-powered vehicle over the course of 10 years of driving on average.
So that's $1,000.
It's about $1,000. And so anybody who owns an EV might go, oh my gosh, it's already so expensive. but
It's part of the price of the car. You just put it
Right.
into the loan, the lease, or whatever you decide to do.
Yeah.
So as far as electric vehicles, I think that some will still be there. Obviously, Tesla's not going anywhere.
Nope.
Nope. And that's fine. People that don't want to buy through the regular dealer network, Tesla, Rivian, Lucid, and the other few brands that are left. It looks like Scout may not be able to sell through their own private way. They have to go through Volkswagen.
Yeah, I think that, well, because they're owned by Volkswagen.
They're owned by Volkswagen.
Yeah, so they're probably going to show up at Volkswagen dealers because
they're fighting that right now.
But-
I'm watching.
but Nissan and Infiniti are consolidating, and minis can be sold at BMW dealerships, and we've seen a lot of
There's-
cross selling from different brands just for access to a dealer network. Because, like I was saying at the much earlier on, that the dealer network is necessary
Mhm.
for this whole process to work. And if the dealers go away, then you can't buy a car,
Right. But
at least according to the current rules.
do you want me to read my crystal ball?
Okay, go ahead.
My crystal ball. Ooh, this is the second or third
Oh, it's
time.
glowing. How does that work?
Glowing. Do you like it? I think Alfa Romeo is probably going to leave the U.S. again.
I think Alfa Romeo is going to die.
No, they'll keep it in Europe because they sell the little guys in Europe that they don't sell here. I think Fiat will also leave
Oh yeah,
along
their
with it.
compact cars they do sell. Yeah,
But they won't. I think Fiat and Alfa Romeo, sadly,
Have-
because I love the
haven't they
Italian cars.
officially discontinued the Giulia and Stelvio?
Quadrifoglio only.
Only the Quadrifoglio. Okay.
So that's the performance. So you can buy a Giulia. You can buy a Tonale, which is basically a Hornet.
Dodge Hornet. Yeah,
yeah.
it's a subcompact hybrid.
Yeah.
Hybrid, and
And then
they're fine. They're good little cars.
they're okay, but it's a Hornet.
I
So you
mean,
might as well buy the Hornet.
At least Alphas are pretty.
I love the Alfa Romeos. I'm a huge fan of cars that come out of Milan, but that's a personal thing. I think Maserati's struggling. They could also potentially pull out of the U.S.
I think at minimum they're going to restrict their offerings.
They're more.
Heavily down to maybe one model for now as they recover. I mean, we're also, and in that same group, we're looking at Chrysler. They have
They're struggling
the
huge.
van,
Stellantis,
and that's
yeah.
it.
Yeah.
The
One minivan, and it only comes hybrid.
yeah, Dodge makes an SUV
A Charger.
and the Charger, which they've gone all electric on. So I mentioned earlier, I said I remembered that Charger was one of the cars.
Mhm.
So they made this huge announcement a couple of years ago at one of the auto shows,
Yeah.
and they said, "Hey, we're going all electric." The new Charger, which I think is also kind of funny that they call it the Charger.
I know.
Charger.
They like the puns.
But I appreciate that. So the Charger was the original car, and the Challenger came later originally. So then dropping the Challenger name and keeping the Charger name is probably really good for at least the legacy recognition. That They
Right.
kept the Charger name.
But the all electric was a bomb, and they got destroyed not just by the press, but by consumers.
And we've
saying you can't just put sound out the exhaust pipe
Yeah,
and make me
and
happy.
we've heard it, and it sounds horrendous.
It's loud.
It's loud, but it doesn't sound like an engine. It sounds
Sounds like a computer.
It sounds like a computer trying to sound like an engine. It sounds like someone's like, wooing through a vuvuzela or something. Like, rah, it's not a great sound.
Yeah.
And there was enough uproar, and also they're seeing the writing on the wall, especially with Tim Knisis coming back in.
But he's in charge of the Ram line.
He was in charge of the Ram.
Matt
He's
Lear's-
interim CEO.
Right, but I tell you what, he's the only one that's gonna save that company, and because you need car people running car companies, there are some exceptions, marketing wise, super geniuses like Jose Munez at Hyundai. I see a lot of, and above him is Jay Chang, super smart people that really get the fact that okay. Customers may want electric cars, so we're going to offer the Ioniq line. But if they made that Ioniq 5 as a plug-in hybrid,
That's a cool car.
oh my God, I would buy one. They're cool.
Yeah.
I'm not a fan of the 6. The 6 is kind of weird looking. But they have other product, and there's a 9 coming out, which is a three-row SUV.
That's part of the whole thing is that they're making good cars.
Yeah.
But they're making them only as EVs. And there are people like you and me and plenty of people that we've talked to that go,
and you.
oh, that's cool. Is it a ICE? Is it a hybrid? It's an EV.
Yeah.
Well,
The same thing with the Volkswagen ID Buzz. They are dying on the vine with that car. And the first thing I said when I drove it, I go, this is and there are reviews on the Car Smarts channel. I go, this is the coolest freaking thing.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
It's a modern bus.
It was awesome.
Yeah.
Price was too high. Why was the price too high? Because they had to invest in the electric infrastructure and took them forever to get it to the U.S. But they're not selling because they're too expensive. Like $65,000 to start. Those buses originally came to the U.S. back in the day of like the 60s and 70s because they were like camper vans.
Yeah.
So you could buy one like, it would be equivalent to like 30 grand now. Now, if those came in 30, 40 grand and they were hybrids, even if they were plug-in hybrids, they wouldn't be able to sell them fast enough.
Yeah. And I guess that's the whole point, that Charger or whoever was in charge of the Dodge decision to offer a hybrid,
Smart.
V6 hybrid, I believe. They saw the writing on the wall and they said, okay, we understand what's happening here. We need to make a good decision to keep this vehicle one of our highest selling vehicles.
Yeah.
Actually, our highest selling vehicle.
Well, it'd be a Jeep. But they had problems with the Jeep
No,
line.
no, no.
Together we're
Just Dodge. Even when they had a whole lineup, the Charger and Challenger were still their highest selling vehicles.
Yeah.
So I mean, you saw when they did the last calls, the different special, the seven different special editions.
They're awesome.
They're really cool, and
they sold them out like that
instantly because it's a good car.
They're great cars,
and now they're destroying their legacy, and we've seen that in a couple other places too.
It's happened before. How many times have they gone bankrupt? 3 or 4.
Right, but now we're also seeing
we're not doing that again.
Porsche saying we will always offer a 911 with an engine with a manual transmission, and you're seeing Ford coming out and making a public, strong statement saying we will always offer a V8 manual as long as it is legal.
Ah, I like that little caveat at the end.
Well, because they don't know what's going to happen, and so now with the tides are shifting, and
your voice matters, your dollars.
Yeah. So if you hear that there's something going on in your state, or your representative is going to go and vote on the overturning of some of these rules, because at the end of the day, we want you to be able to buy a car that you want.
Right.
Why should you have to buy? Let's say it was going the other way. You're only allowed to buy diesels with no DPF. It's just black smoke spewing out. It has
they're bigger now.
The vehicle's 10,000 pounds and it's the size of a house, and that's all you get.
Well, like, or a Lada if you lived in Russia.
Or a Lada. It does. Yeah. Everything's breaking. It's falling apart. It's made of tin, essentially.
Bad. You got to buy it. That's your only option.
Exactly. So the whole point is, we want you to be able to buy whatever you want to be able to buy, and the system, in quotes, should allow you to do that in whatever way you see fit.
Right.
And that's the reason why we love our diesel vehicles, because that was our choice. We got it. Great range, great comfort. And amazing for road trips, good fuel economy around town. And
that's the whole thing with diesel.
Right. And
they were designed for 50-some miles to the gallon. Mine gets like 38.
And I have a friend that drives a rear-wheel drive convertible sports car.
Cool.
All year round.
Really?
All year round. Throws snows on it and keeps driving. I had a friend who drove a motorcycle all year round in New York City.
That's nuts.
And then I have a friend that has an EV and he loves it. So at the end of the day, you should be able to do all of those things and whatever else you want to do without the government coming down on you and saying you have to do this. And so now with the tides shifting, go and speak to your representatives and your senators and your local politicians, because they also have a hand in this. In fact, local politicians usually have the biggest hand in this.
Right.
So,
and they can work their way up the pike. So if you don't have to be evasive and in their face, you can just say, listen, I want to talk to you about a situation that I'm not happy with. You're charging me 2.6 cents per mile. I don't think it's fair. I'm already paying for it in gas taxes. Why should I have to pay for it as well? The state of Washington is doing that.
And local representatives are easier to get a hold of. Like we go to our car show, and we see our local town supervisor. We run right into people, talk to him all the time, and it's normal.
Easier to reach them than it is if you're going to reach your senators, your House of Representatives. Although representatives, depends who it is.
It depends, yeah.
Right. But as far as different brands, Ford and GM are really pushing hard to keep the electric vehicle mandate in place, or at least some sort of credit, because they're hurting. When you look at Stellantis, they're working on it. We just covered that. When you're looking at the Japanese brands, Toyota said, nope, we're not going to make the change. And they didn't. And have to give them a lot of credit for that, because Toyota really stood their ground. They took a lot of heat, and the result is they're in one of the best positions of all the brands.
I think they're the world's
Lar-
top brand right now.
Yes, they're number one. Number two is Volkswagen.
They're top
Group.
in Japan and top in the world, of course.
Right, and then in Japan, number two is Honda.
Yeah.
They have the Prologue, which is a partnership with General Motors.
They're much lower on the worldwide totem pole.
Yeah, right, but globally, they're having a heck of a time selling these electric vehicles. They've got the Acura ZDX, which I've reviewed both of them. If you want one, when I review cars, I'm never brutal. I don't tear it apart.
Yeah, we're not Top Gear.
No, but I always say, if you're interested in one, this is what you need. This is what you need to look at. These are the considerations, and I never put the negative on the fact that it's an electric car. That's your choice. My goal is to give you information, so if you want to make a purchase, that's where the Car Smarts is. But as far as Honda, they're kind of struggling because really they're selling Civics all day long. They can't make them fast enough. Honda CR-Vs. They're outselling everything, much like the Toyota RAV4. Those are where people like them. Nissan, well, they're in a lot of trouble. Just before we did this podcast, they were moved down by Moody's to junk bond rating because they canceled their relationship with Honda. We covered that on the channel, so you can check that out.
And they lost a lot of their partnership funding from Mitsubishi and Renault.
Right.
And look, they're hurting. They've put so much money into EV development, and
they've only got two cars,
and this is
the Aria and the Leaf.
And this is exactly what we've been talking about: is that their gas powered cars sell, but they have to sell their EV cars, or else they are going to be subject to massive fines. So they end up restricting their production, which ends up losing jobs, and now they're not making enough cash flow, and they're drowning.
Well, there was an interesting rumor that Tesla was interested in buying Nissan.
That would have been very
smart
for
both.
But we've now
it's now totally.
We've heard it's not true.
It's not true.
But now
cool.
Imagine a company that has already invested billions of dollars in EV tech, and another company that specializes only in EV tech, and put the two of them together, and now Tesla's got a worldwide partner. Yeah. That's also supported by the Japanese government.
That could have been beneficial, because I know that Tesla's starting to build in India as well. So we look at other brands and what they're doing besides the Japanese brands. And when you're looking at Subaru and Mazda and Mitsubishi, they all have Subaru and Mazda work in partnership with Toyota. Mitsubishi is underneath Nissan, and there's other little companies as well. But when you're looking, if you take another shift and look at what is an Indian car company, but in reality is a British car in people's eyes, Land Rover and Jaguar. Land Rover's doing really well, and they're selling gasoline-powered vehicles. They offer a plug-in hybrid, but you know what? People that buy Land Rovers and Range Rovers and Defenders, they love their vehicles.
Yep, and they're going to keep making them. And also,
that's where they're making money. The whole company is making money off of that.
I wish that we knew when Jaguar made the decision to drop their line and move towards this all EV and drop all their old customers. And this is important.
Very foolish move. And we covered this on the channel
because
too.
Trump said that he was going to repeal these mandates and undo all of this 6 months to a year ago, something like that.
He campaigned on it.
Right, he campaigned on it, but I don't think anybody thought it was real, and now it's happening. And so now the tides are turning, and you're seeing all the companies attempting to adjust. And let's say that he was able to dial back the CAFE standards and reduce the what's the current MPG requirement? It's like
54.5 miles to the gallon. They probably don't want to bring it back to 34.5. Nobody makes that,
which means everybody's paying fines, or they're supplementing that with EVs, and they're silly multiplier on EV range that allows them to.
That's huge. That's a whole other kind.
It's like, what is it, 400 times or something like that?
Right. So that's
that was California, but still.
No, it's across the entire country on EPA, because when you see MPGE and it goes, it's 104. There's no way to qualify the comparative between
because
range and miles per gallon. So they came up with this weird multiplier, which is very fishy.
So MPGE is how much range your vehicle has
versus miles to the gallon.
No, but it's not comparable though,
right?
Because it's charge. So so either make a calculation that's how much charge you use per mile on average, or just go over to kilowatt hours per mile and just stick it there.
They don't. They use MPGE, so be careful of that number if you're looking at a hybrid or an electric car.
But when it comes to them selling and what they're beholden to from the government, that range is then multiplied by 400, because because there's an encouragement. It's essentially a legislated encouragement to make EVs beyond all the other stuff happening.
But that's
And-
partly where the government's in bed with the car manufacturers.
Exactly. And so that allows like Dodge with the Demon, 1,000 horsepower.
Yeah.
And then they can also sell an EV and it balances out for them. Or they can buy the tax credits from Tesla to help with that. But
the Elephant, I think, is 1,000 horsepower.
but so the Elephant is 1,000 horsepower crate motor you can get, but I don't think that counts towards their cars being sold. Anyway, so
no, I don't think so.
I don't think so
because it's part of the Mopar lineup. But
yeah, I think it's an aftermarket kit. Anyway, so with the rules in place as they are at this moment, Jaguar is making a good financial move for the future. Hold on, this is my hot take.
Okay,
It's not really a hot take.
I'm listening.
I'm trying to think like somebody who's sitting in the boardroom saying, we need to make sure that the company doesn't collapse. Which is, we need to make EVs. We make no EVs. The last one we made was the I-Pace, and it was horrible.
Sadly, because the car looked cool. But
It's
if
a
it was
great-
a hybrid, they'd sell them all day long.
Right. So you have this car that doesn't work well and doesn't sell well, and you say, okay, we got to go EV, or else the company's gone. We cannot
They made
afford.
a bold change.
Right. So they drop their whole lineup. They do a big last call, the R75 Heritage, whatever, on the F-Type, and say, all right, this is our final model. Buy them while they're hot.
We drove one. It was
They
cool.
go all EV because Land Rover's not going EV.
Nope.
No, Land Rover is Land Rover, and that car doesn't work as an EV. We've seen that.
Yeah, you'll have a range of nothing.
We've seen that with lots of other vehicles trying to make these all-electric trucks, and they're not great.
No.
Because EVs, unfortunately, they don't seem to work well as trucks.
No. They're good as vehicles. As
They're
EVs
good.
and
They're
cars.
good as like cars putting around town.
Right.
So,
But not off-road vehicles, although I know Jeep does an off-road.
well, this time,
Jeep, but-
unfortunately, so you can go. There are some places on the internet where you can find blooper reels of Cybertrucks getting stuck in like regular snow.
Oh, I just saw one someone sent me. Thanks for sending those.
Yeah, whereas just we couldn't go anywhere.
I think I sent that one to you.
Well, at least they just got a 5-star crash rating.
Yeah, but I didn't say it wasn't about safety. So, I mean,
Right.
it's made of stainless
But at the
steel.
end of the day, you know, the cars aren't made for that. So Jaguar says we're going to go all EV,
Yep.
thinking that, all right, this will, even if, and they're also shrinking their dealer network. They're raising the price by like double of their last XJ.
We're
Or
gonna have
whatever.
one hell of a time selling these cars.
Right, but that's the point, is that they don't need to sell a lot of them. They need to sell enough to fulfill the requirements from the government so they can keep selling Land Rovers. Because Land Rovers are where they make money.
I know where you're coming from, and I see that it makes sense,
So
but it could
but
kill the brand here in the
Purely
U.S.
financially, that
I don't
was-
see how they're going to make money because you can't make money on electric cars. Nobody makes
So
money.
that
on
was my
electric
original
cars.
question. When did they make that decision to make that move?
Oh, I'm sure it was a long time ago.
I'm sure it was years ago, because
Could have been 5-6 years ago. It could have been back when Obama was in office.
even just the marketing.
They were pressured by the British government, by the Indian government, by the U.S. government. Everybody saying, "Hey, you have to step up and comply." And they said, "We're trying, and cars aren't selling, so we're gonna have to make a bold move." And they made a bold move. Whether it's a good move or not,
But they were
I
pressured
would
into it.
wager a bet that it's not. But we shall see. Now, if they come with a hybrid, that could be interesting.
Okay, so now the tide's
Plug-in
turned.
hybrid. Yep.
Let's bring out the crystal ball, please.
Oh,
It's glowing. Very nice. And Trump repeals. Trump and the senators and the representatives that have all agreed that, you know, all it takes is somebody with enough voice to stand up and say, "Hey, I know you guys have been talking about this, but let's actually do it. Let's get
Well,
people
these
together
are
and do this," right? And so now you have a whole bunch of people that are standing up and saying, "Let's undo CAFE, let's undo CARB, let's undo the tax credit,
it's happening.
and let's actually make a move to open up the market to all different kinds of vehicles." So all of that happens. Now Jaguar's made a bad decision. Financially speaking, look, I said this in a
But who
previous.
can predict?
I said this in a
future?
previous
You can get
episode.
pretty darn close with your crystal ball.
Yeah.
But that, on a global basis, they probably didn't think that President Trump would do this.
No.
And I'm glad he did, because it opens up options for you as a consumer to buy whatever you want
and it puts pressure on other countries to follow suit.
They usually do.
And there's been some word from
Not all of them. Takes time.
There's been some word from Germany and Italy that they might make similar moves, and
Italy already said that.
dial back. And if they do that, that only puts more pressure on the manufacturers to make more ICEs and hybrids and step away from the mandate for all EVs. And remember that the mandate is not you will buy an EV and you will like it. It is so economically prohibitive for manufacturers to make anything but an EV that they won't. And then it's only EVs at 2035 or wherever.
Gonna happen.
Different countries have different markers,
go
but a
out
lot of them are
business.
around 2035.
Yeah. So the Germans, though, make phenomenal cars. Now, according to the people I've spoken with at Mercedes-Benz and BMW, not Audi, they have said, we will build what customers want. We will build gas. We will build plug-in hybrid. We'll build a hybrid. We'll build electric. And we'll just shift according to what you want. So you want electric, it's going to be electric. You want gas or whatever, in Europe it's diesel, which I love the diesel cars they have there. They're just fabulous.
There's a lot of diesel cars.
Oh, I wish we could get here.
Before we had
An X6M diesel.
before we had the Cayenne, I think that's what we really wanted.
I tried to get one.
We really
And it
wanted
almost
those.
happened. And then everything changed.
Oh, and the Audi came out with a couple years ago, the S6 and S7 had a diesel option, a high horsepower
Europe.
diesel option. I'm like, oh, that's so cool. I want it.
Yeah, by the time they're 10 years old and you can bring them here, this probably beat on
25.
25 now. Oh, jeez.
Yeah, the chicken tax.
Yes, the chicken tax. That's a whole nother thing. That might get repealed also.
So now
see.
people are trying to, hey, Trump, repeal the chicken tax. I've seen that like a couple posts
Yeah,
online.
I don't think he knows what that is.
There's no way.
that's
It's
something-
such an esoteric, it's a weird, funky little rule that was put in that was supported by dealership groups back in the 90s, 2000s. I think it was the 90s,
Yeah.
maybe the late 80s. And they said, hey, all these gray market cars, which are cars that are built in Europe for the European market that technically meet U.S. requirements, so you would just buy them in Europe and ship them over. Like,
I'm in.
there's a lot of stuff. Just because it's
Some cool cars.
just
over
because
there.
it's not specifically said that it's legal doesn't mean it's illegal, and so that's why. And so they brought them over, and so they did it under the guise of a chicken tax because they rolled it in with other legislation.
Right, which has nothing to do with chickens, really. But
Well, it's
it
still
does and it doesn't.
a little bit, but
It was about food and all that. But
Yeah.
somebody was pretty crafty, which is typical of government.
and then people like Bill Gates, who's a big car guy, and
He's a big car guy?
he's got a huge collection.
Bill Gates?
Yes.
No way. I didn't
Yes.
know that.
So yeah.
I learned something new.
Yeah,
that-
he wanted to buy some of these gray market sports
I
cars
figured
back
he
in the
liked
80s.
Priuses.
Uh,
Pre-I.
Well, I don't know what he's into now, but at least at the time he liked Porsches and GTRs.
Oh, well, that's not too bad.
And he really wanted to buy one and he couldn't. And him and a couple of other very, very powerful and rich friends got together and went to the government and said, please carve out an ability for us to bring these cars over. And so that's how you have the show. The show and the trailer and show, the show and trailer. What's it? There's a law. You know what I'm talking about? Where there's a car that's not legal and they can bring them in and put them on a field, but
And
they
they
can't
play
drive
there
them on the
for
road.
show only.
Yes, you can only drive them.
Unless you got dealer plates.
You can only no. You can't drive them with dealer plates. You can only drive them 100.
would they know?
It's like 100 miles, and they check the odometers, and you have to submit it because you can't register them, so you can't drive them on the road unless you're like driving it from a trailer to a show lot. There's a lot of really, really specific stuff, and there were some people
Just
that
misconnect
were.
the speedometer.
There were some people in California that were driving around with R34 GTRs. If you've seen Fast and Furious, you know the R34 GTR, the iconic car that Paul Walker was driving.
Mm-hmm.
And so someone was driving a car like that around California, and they put too many miles on it, and they came after the car and crushed it.
That would tear my
Right.
heart
So
out.
so as serious as this is,
Yeah.
right? That's kind of what we're talking about, this level of silliness and seriousness with
Right.
legislation. So if it's all undone,
I think we need to get Bernie Moreno.
obviously
the
chicken
cars
tax is
are.
a different thing. Let's hope for
and-
the fingers crossed for the chicken
You need
tax
someone like Bernie Moreno, who I'm trying to get a hold of right now to have a conversation with things like.
because he likes cars, he knows cars.
Well, he worked the business. He understands. And He
Yeah.
understands what you want. And you need to have people in office that understand business, that understand the industries. And there's lots of other industries as well. And they need to to be there to represent you.
Yep.
Versus people that they're lifetime politicians, which was never what it was designed to be. And I think the concern for me is when the government gets too deep into the pockets of the car makers, the result is what we're seeing exactly right now. Car makers are showing us new cars that people don't want. I can't tell you how many brands, General Motors and many, many, many others, that are showcasing brand new all-electric cars that are extremely heavy, extremely expensive.
The new Blazer EV SS,
Well,
fastest SS
new
ever.
Cadillac IQ
Just-
coming out, a
yeah,
new
it's just this-
Lyric. It's like, what are you doing?
Yeah, it's just
People
this
aren't buying
huge-
what you have now.
It's a huge brick on four wheels.
Even the Hummer is cool. The Hummer is a cool piece.
Yeah. Okay.
But it's super heavy. It's almost 10,000
Yeah,
pounds.
but even for the regular cars,
It's destroying the road.
great example is the new Mustang GTD just came out and it's 4,300 pounds.
Too heavy.
And that's exactly, it's way too heavy. Well, that's what an EV weighs.
The GTD is a high performance car that Ford is selling.
What's it, 800 horse or something like that?
Well, I think there's some mistakes on the car. It's too heavy.
Well, no, but the
It's
point
too
is the weight.
expensive.
The
Yeah.
point is the weight
Yeah.
because we're looking at a
It's being built
sports
by an outside
and
company.
we're looking at a sports car and they made it as light as possible.
Well, it should be.
And it's 4,300 pounds.
It's 1,000 pounds too heavy.
And or more in my opinion, but then
It's
you
gonna
look
be a
at an EV and they are that heavy,
Well, how about this? We're talking about GTDs.
which wears on the road.
You know what beats the
which
GTD?
beats your tires and brakes up, which it's just too much.
Well, this is where General Motors was smart. They put the new Corvette out, and it destroys the GTD on the track.
Even destroys a GT2 RS.
Yeah, that's pretty impressive. So I give General Motors credit, and I know that's Mark Royce, who's the vice president of the company. He's a real car guy.
Mhm.
I've judged with him at Amelia Island. He's a good guy.
And it proves to
And
people
he loves cars, and that's who you want running these car companies. People that know what you want and build awesome cars, or a great marketer. Like I said, there's a lot of them out there, like Jose Munoz and people like that. He just happens to be the one that came to mind because it's either a good marketer who understands. But that's why I worry about Jim Farley putting out a 4,300 pound. He's the president of Ford. You put out a pretty heavy car.
they still haven't pulled back on their statement to go all EV. The only
They also
exception
have
is the
to-
Mustang.
He's getting pressure from Bill Ford. Like I said, it's very
Yeah, the
great.
only exception is the Mustang, and so we're
Well, he'll keep the Mustang because he is a car guy. And I know he owns a lot of really nice cars. And I know he races because he's raced with me before. I know he's got, I talk to people that work at these car companies and they go, here's the problem. I want to keep my job.
Mhm.
I get it. So you have to drink the Kool-Aid and follow along with what your boss says. Otherwise, your job is at risk. And I get that. But also, if cars aren't selling, it falls down on somebody. And somebody's going to take the heat down the road because as we see things unfolding from Lee Zeldin, from Sean Duffy, from President Trump, from Bernie Moreno, and others that are on our team, Thomas Massey, Rand Paul, we're seeing a lot of people that are going, what are we doing here? And there's a lot more. I'm sure I didn't list enough of them.
But they're all trying to
They're
make your
all-
life as consumers easier.
Right. And less government regulation.
Yeah.
That's the whole
and,
key.
and specifically focused around cars here, and we are seeing that movement. It's going to be a positive in the long term.
Yep.
If these changes are made and stick.
They got
Because
to put them, they got to write
we are
them in a
talking
way.
about the survival of a
Billions,
trillion
trillion, yeah.
dollar industry that supports millions globally, millions of businesses. And even if it's like, you're some little repair shop or whatever, every manufacturer needs to be legally supports any of the vehicles that they make for 20 years, 10 years,
Right,
20
for
years.
parts,
It's-
10 to 20 years, depending on the company.
It depends. So you have to be able to get those parts. And so, something happens.
There's an aftermarket company that comes in to make that part, or the original manufacturer makes it under another name.
Or it disappears.
That's a problem.
And so hopefully these moves allow for the long-term success of these companies to continue to do what they do.
Right.
Because
Otherwise,
at the end of the day, we just want the industry to survive.
Mhm.
And the moves that we're seeing from the Obama and Biden administration, specifically when it comes to cars,
they were anti-car. all day
and
long.
California, and we're even looking at things like road diets, which we should do another episode on.
Yes. They call it something else now. I have to look up the name. It was some.
Necking, right? Or no,
No.
I did hear about necking, but there's
Well, that's what it really is. They're making the
city
roads.
planning.
Or, yeah.
It's city planning. They're trying to get people to walk, and they only want you to walk like
Right.
2 miles
In the middle of the winter when
Well,
it's 0 degrees
well, anywhere.
outside.
They want you to be like in. They want you to live in like a 2-mile radius.
It's not
Essentially.
going to happen.
But so hopefully, all of these moves will lead to the long-term success of these companies, which will continue to allow
Just jobs.
you to live your life the way that you want and drive the cars that you want without some guy in a suit so far away that he doesn't even know that you exist,
Right.
or even that your town exists for that matter.
Nor do they care.
They don't care.
Right.
And so we want to be able to keep that alive.
Yeah. And we're part of the auto industry our whole entire lives. My family, my father worked for the big 3 automakers. I mean, my whole family's cars. I mean, it's not just that, but it's you. It's you and the impact to you, your family, your life, living every day to have the freedom to go wherever you want, whenever you want.
Yep.
And I think that's the bottom line. And so the key is don't blame the car dealers when things aren't changing as quickly. It's really the car
So
manufacturers.
there's going to be a delay. Anytime you see,
It's going to take some time.
yeah. So let's say tomorrow, I don't know, that all of these rules get repealed and changed and everything
Forever.
Yeah. Well, even if it's just we don't see cafe carb and the tax credit coming back for the foreseeable future.
Mm-hmm.
That still means that it could take a couple of years before that actually
Maybe less.
impacts.
Depends.
Yeah, but
Depends on the car
but it's
maker.
not gonna. But it's not gonna be the day after.
No.
And it's not gonna be by the end of 2025. It's gonna be 2026, 2027
Right.
before you actually see these changes affecting you at a dealership level. And they're still going to try to push EVs because they're going to be sitting in the lots.
Right.
They already have 2-year-old EVs sitting on lots they're trying to sell. We did a whole video on that. Go and check that out.
Yeah.
And
And the price of gasoline will also come down, and that's going to take
that's-
time as well.
that's the hope.
And
Yeah.
that will make your budget a little freer to do the things you want to do.
Trump publicly stated, I think just like a day or two ago,
Mm-hmm.
that he was trying to, the next thing he's tackling is trying to get gas prices down. Oh, and eggs.
Well, he's got a mandate,
Right.
so let's see what happens. We'll be monitoring the auto industry specifically.
Yep.
If you have any additional subjects you'd like us to tackle,
Yeah, absolutely.
we are
down
open.
below.
Yeah, in the comments. We love your comments. We appreciate your comments. And of course, anything you want to chime in on, we love to get your feedback as well. It's a free world. We want your comments. And of course, if you got value from this video, please like and subscribe, not just to this channel, Car Coach Reports, but to Car Smarts for the car reviews. We cover all kinds of different vehicles. And if you have got questions, put those down below too. And all social media for you is at?
You can find me online at PaulFix3 anywhere. I primarily post on Instagram.
And I'm at Lauren Fix everywhere. And I literally post on everything, including a Substack. You name the social media site, I think I'm there. It keeps me busy, keeps me out of trouble.
True. And with that being said, thank you so much for watching, and may ye have more horses for power.
Yes, we are from the Church of the High Lift Cam. May there be more horsepower for all. And maybe in the future, I'll do the whole rundown.
Oh, that's actually fun. That'd be good. All right, thanks for watching.
All right, thanks so much. Take care.